Welcome to the video. My name is Steven. Today, I want to go over writer's block and maybe not like writer's block if you're writing music, but just in general when you kind of get into like a slump. And this is kind of how I've been able to get out of it, and hopefully, this will help you get out of it as well. So, and this is loosely based off a conversation I had with a friend of mine like a week ago. I saw him at the gym, and my friend was like, yeah, recently I've just been struggling to get to work on my purpose, on what's important in life. And I started asking him questions about it, and I started telling him what I did. And basically, so I think sometime last year, this is kind of what my work hours looked like last year. So if we start here in January, and I just want to say this isn't going to be like very flashy. I've said this in some of my other videos because I don't want this to be like some dopamine crap where you like have to watch some like crazy edits and all this stuff. This is something that I really want you to take into consideration and try to learn and give your opinions in the comments on what I'm talking about, and give me your own opinions on how you've maybe gotten over a rough patch or when things happen that you just start getting lazier and you stop working as much. So basically, last January, I started my business in December of last year. So last January, I was like here. Oh, sorry. And this is like hours. So like, say maybe this is like 200 hours, and this is like 100 hours of work per month. January was like, wow, I'm losing it. January was like maybe right here, and then February, March, April kind of went up a little bit. May went up a little bit, and then like June I went like way up here, and then July was like down here. And from like July to August and September to October, like I slowly climbed up. I mean, I actually think like around maybe August or something like that, I had hit like another peak like that and kind of went back up. Um, but that's what my work looked like last year. And say like, I know this scale is like crappy, but like say this is July. So this right here is July, and I like went down. I was way up here in June, and then July, I went down here, and it took me months to get back on course to where I was originally then. Right, it took a long time, and actually, I don't think I ever beat that peak position. Um, I don't think I ever beat that, like going into the end of the year. Like I think I honestly, like I had kind of climbed up, and then I don't know, but like pretend I didn't get up that high. So like, yeah, kind of like that, right? It doesn't really matter. But the point is, I had this big slump in July, and I couldn't get over it for months at a time. I was not able to get out of it, and I couldn't figure out why. And like back then, I was doing like all these habits. I had this big habit tracker, and I had like my push-up tracker, and I had my deep work like calculator, and I had I would do like 8 hours of work. And here's the biggest thing that had happened in this story. So I was originally up here when I started, and if you saw one of my recent videos, I went over this. But this is like the emotion, and I'm not gonna like dive deep into this, but emotion versus time on a project. And basically, you start up here with uninformed optimism, and then you come down here to informed pessimism, and then you reach the bottom, which is the valley of despair, and then you come up here with informed optimism, and then you get up there. This is success, right? And again, what most people do is they stop here and they don't get through the rest of it, and they keep changing boats, right? Well, this is what happened to me. I was up here, I came down here, and I didn't realize how long I was sitting down in this spot. I sat here for 4 months, right? 4 months I sat down in this little hole and I couldn't get out of it. Now I'm a little bit more up this way, except even more recently, I've actually kind of hit this. This is where I'm at now. So I'm about, this is where I got to last month. And I kind of just dipped down like this to here, right? Like objectively, this is kind of the direction that you go. But I took a dip. Like I was in the right spot. I was doing the right things. And then I just took a random dip. And when I say a random dip, I mean 4 days ago. I just took, and like obviously, like from a macro lens, this is what it looks like. The whole like road to success. But in the micro, it doesn't really look like that. Like this is kind of like a V shape. It'll look something a bit more like this in the micro. Like it'll be, you'll kind of trickle down, and then it'll be, in the micro. But in the macro, if you pull out long enough, it looks like a V. Because again, this is 1 point right here, but this is 4 months. 4 months that I was sitting in this little hole. And who knows, I could still be in this hole right now and not even realize it, right? But that's where I was. Um, and so my buddy was like having the same problem, basically, where he's just been struggling to stay on task, work on his purpose, do the stuff that matters. And so I kind of started diving into some questions. And the first thing I asked him was, what is the thing that's distracting you? So, and this is kind of the action I want you to take here. So, like, what is distraction? So, distractions, anything that's preventing you from doing the task, right? And he said, social media. All right. So then I asked him, what are the actions you could take to like not scroll on social media? He's like, well, I could delete Instagram and I could set a timer on my phone and I could all this. And then he was like, but that doesn't really change anything because like I still like when I sit down, I can't do it. And it's like, here's the problem, right? You give yourself these expectations, and I've done this in my life too many times. I give myself this expectation, right? So here's, wow, this pen doesn't even work. I need to get new pens. So yeah. So here's what happens. Yesterday, we'll put yesterday here. You sat down for 8 hours of work and you did 200 push-ups and you went to the gym for 2 hours and you read 50 pages of a book, right? Let's say like just this is like simple. This is very simple. Like this is what you did yesterday, okay? And um this is normal, I think. I don't know if this is normal, but I think this like is this not normal? I don't know. But like this seems it's doable, right? Like this isn't something that's abnormal. I hope. But anyway, so this is yesterday. Um and today you did 2 hours of work and you only did 20 push-ups and you went to the gym for 30 minutes and you didn't read at all. And which this is something that's actually happened to me. So these stats are not like unrealistic, right? Like these these are stats that I've actually hit on 2 separate days. Um and it literally back to back. So like I've had days where I hit 8 hour work day, 200 push-ups, 2 hours in the gym, 50 pages of a book, and then like the next day it's like I didn't do any of that stuff. I did like 20 push-ups and I only went to the gym for 2 hours and I went to the gym for 30 minutes. And I get like down about myself. And what sucks is after that, it's like tomorrow, or like I guess it's today, right? But tomorrow, considering like if today's the first and this is the second and this is the third, right? And then the next day you're like down and out because you didn't have as good of a day as this day right here. So you use that as an excuse to like not do as good. So you work again for 2 hours and you don't do any push-ups and you go to the gym for 1 hour. Um, and you read 10 pages of a book, right? And then you just like kind of, I don't know, it's like you get hung up on this. Like, this happened on this day. And now I don't know what to do. I feel like shit because this day happened and now my days like this don't reflect. Um, and I want to take that back to the graph I was talking about earlier. Like in the micro, right? Like micro, it looks like you're just, kind of like this. You're kind of going downhill and it sucks. But like in the macro, it's actually it's actually like this. It's like in the macro you're kind of going like this. But you're right here in this little tiny dip. This is this week, this little dip that you're in. And like this is just a week right here. This is like the span of 3 months, let's say. And this is like 3 days. And you like hate yourself because 3 days didn't go as well as you expected. But if you look at like the entire picture, like if you pull out even further and you like bring this out to like 3 years, right? So like this is, or yeah, like I don't know. Basically, this is where you were originally. This is where you were like 1 year ago, and like this is where you are now. And you're like right here in this little dip, if you can see that. And you're like complaining because it doesn't look as good as you want it to be, like what you expected. Let's make that dip a little, let's make like an actual peak there. So like, yeah, I guess that kind of looks good, but you're in this little tiny dip and you're like mad. And what happens is a lot of times in the beginning, for starters, and this is what happened to me, right? Um, when I first started out and when I had that little break in July of last year, I couldn't get over myself. And I was like, what's my problem? Why am I not better? And I think over time you start to get out of that dip easier. And I'm going to show you how to get out of that dip in this video. But like basically the first time it happens, you you're here and you have this dip. And then you continue to go down this dip and then you kind of start to get out of it and then it takes time. Um and then the second time it's like the dip is shorter and you get in, and then the third time is like this, right? But what happens a lot of times, 99% of people that aren't aren't too emotionally invested in whatever they're working on, this is what happens here. They dip and then they dip like this and they never get back to it. Whereas the more successful people get back into it. And I'm going to tell you why that happens. It's the fear of failure. First of all, it might not actually just be failure. It's like any fear that you have. There's multiple different kinds of fears. And actually, you know what? This book is right here, and we're going to go into it. We're going to dive into it. I'll probably cut out. This is Think and Grow Rich. But I remember, I haven't read this book in a while, but basically he talks about fears at some point in this book. Yes, the 6 Ghosts of Fear. 3 something. I'll probably cut some of this. All right, here we go. And I guess, who knows? Like, this is subjectively right to Napoleon Hill, but here are the 6 fears that didn't know I was going to talk about in this video. We have poverty, we have criticism, We have ill health, um, loss of a loved one, old age, and death. And I think these are the fears that I was thinking of. I was thinking of more like the fear of whatever you thought was going to happen not happening. Um, and basically, yeah, I don't know. That was kind of my thought around this. That there was like a fear of self doubt. But I guess this kind of all goes into this, right? These are the fears that I just wanted to lay out. Like these are some fears that you have, right? Poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of a loved one, death, and old age. And actually, he labels in the book that these are the most crucial. What's happening, right? These right here are the most crucial ones. These also suck, but these are the worst ones. So let's explain why this relates to what we're talking about. These fears right here, let's use poverty for example, right? You're working, and I'm going to tell you my story, exactly how it went. I was working a lot, and I got to this point up here. And on my way up, this is what I was doing. I was making cold calls. I was doing sales calls. I was, that's it. That's all I was doing. Cold calls and sales calls. I was doing all that all the way up. And I did hours and hours and days worth of sales calls and cold calls. And guess what happened? I didn't reach the level that I thought I was going to reach. I thought I was going to close like 10 sales and make like 5 grand, 10 grand, and I was going to be fine. Well, that didn't happen. My expectations, my reality, my expectations met reality, right? And a lot of times, I'm going to just be drawing all over the board today. Expectations, a lot of the time, our expectations are up here, and reality is down here. And what ends up happening is at some point, and actually, you know what? I want to make a graph out of this. I think that's the best way to do this. Um, so here's the graph. Time. And I think on this side we have possibility. Watch me do this again. Possibility. All right. I kind of nailed that, but not really. So what's interesting is actually reality. Reality time goes like this, right? Over time, it goes like this. But in our minds, this is actually what how it kind of goes, right? And at some point, we meet this little line right here. We meet this intersection where we realize that our expectations have gone below what's actually possible. So this is how possibility works, but our imagination of what's going to happen is this line right here. So this is expectation. And I'm sorry if you can hear, there's like a squeaky noise in the background. At least I can hear it. That's my roommate's dog. Expectation, and this is reality, right? And if you watch one of my previous videos where I talked about expectation and reality, and like how expectation is linear and reality is um, exponential, uh, this is a different graph. Like this is possibility. The other graph has time, and this is results. This is possibility. So our expectations are very high right here, and end up getting lowered. And the thing is, they're lower than what's actually real. See right there, this little area here. And that's what makes us dip in our productivity. So as you can see here, I went all the way up here. And when my expectations went below there, my productivity dipped massively. And I will actually say this, I didn't work for maybe like 3 days after I'd gotten met with this. So it's our job as an entrepreneur or as honestly a man of purpose or someone of dignity to not do that. And if the little dip happens, to acknowledge it and go forward. So now that I've done a hopefully decent job explaining how that works and why that works, because again, it happens because of your fears, right? Fear of poverty. I thought that because I didn't get the results that I wanted, I was going to be poor, hence dropping it down. Or because of criticism from others, right? Dropped it down. And I want these to stay up here for a while because I think that these are important to know and you should know this stuff. That like these are big fears you shouldn't be afraid of. I haven't read Think and Grow Rich in like over a year and a half, but wow, it's been like 2 years at this point since I read that book. But I would say that you shouldn't count these out. All these fears are reasons why you stop doing what you need to do. So let's talk about how to fix it. Remember, I told you I had my work schedule and I had my and I actually had like I have a daily routine schedule set like with everything that I need to do, and then I had like a push-up tracker and a habit tracker, right? What you want to do is scale it back because see the push-up tracker I was hitting 200 300 push-ups a day, and I was hitting all of my habits on my habit tracker, and I was working 8-hour days, 10-hour days. And then I got in that little slump and I couldn't get out of it because here's the thing, to go from, remember, we have the 2-hour day of work and the 30 minutes in the gym and no reading, 0 pages. That's today. And yesterday, remember from what we were talking about earlier, right? Yesterday you worked 8 hours, you worked 10 hours, you were at the gym for 2 hours, you meditated for 3 hours, you did your gratitude journal and all that crap, and you did 200 push-ups, and then today you did 0 books read and 0 push-ups and no time in the gym. Well, let's use today. Let's change it to this week, right? So for the entire week, this is how you were, right? What makes you think that you can go back to 10-hour workday and 20-minute meditation and like all this stuff over here, right? Where 2-hour gym, 30 pages of a book, and like 200 push-ups. Like, what makes you think you can get there, right? And it's this bridge, it's this fall off between the two, it's this disconnect, right? So there's a disconnect between these two things. There's this little middle ground, and you don't know what to do, how to get here, right, to where you want to be, which ultimately this person, because if this is the stuff you're trying to do, this person is more like the person you want to become. So like if you're trying to fix it, that's the first good sign, right? Because like I said, a lot of people, they get stuck in a rut and they don't go back to it. But if you have to get back to it and you're trying to figure out why, that's the first sign that you're doing things properly. So you've already recognized it. So the first part is recognition. So you have to recognize. I think that's how you spell that. You have to recognize that you have gone down into a hole compared to where you used to be, right? And I would also like to add, recognize what fear it is, right? In my situation, I had the fear of poverty. That was my fear, right? And that's why I started dipping down because these fears got into my head, right? They're like demons in a sense, if that's what you believe in. They get into your head and you can't let go of them. And that's what happened to me, was I had this fear of poverty. And so I recognized it. And then I was trying to figure out how could I fix it. So in this area, you need to bridge the gap. How do we do that? We do in between. We start with little steps. Like, first of all, if you've done this before and this was your average day, then how'd you get here in the first place? Because I guarantee you on day one, whenever you decided to go on this epic adventure to start a business or to better yourself or to pay more attention to school, I guarantee you didn't start out studying for 15 hours a day, right? Like, it took you time to build there. So what I like to do is start over. I start over completely, right? That's the second step. So, prime example, I had this push-up tracker, and I'm going to draw it right here, where I would do my original push-up tracker was like 10, 20, 30 push-ups, and then like the days of the week, right? And I would X off for how many I've done, right? Well, eventually I got to a point where I would no longer do 10 push-ups per set. So I started doing 30 push-ups per set at some point. So my habit tracker looked like this. It went 30, 60, 90. Well, when I dipped down into this, this little slump, I wouldn't crank out one push-up because every time I cranked out a push-up, in my mind, I psychologically had to push out 30, and I did not want to push out 30. So what did I do? Because for a while I was doing this, right? Every day I was hitting that mark. Well, at some point it slowed down to where, and let's say these are like weeks, right? So like let's just say this is how many push-ups I did a week, right? Yeah, so I did 90 push-ups every day for the first week, 60 push-ups every day for the second week, and then the third and fourth week I didn't do any push-ups at all. And I was trying to figure out why. And it's like, because you don't want to get on the ground and do 30 push-ups at a time. So what do you have to do? You have to start over. Get rid of that, right? We're back to the normal 10 push-ups. And let me tell you something right now. I made that change 6 months ago, and ever since then, my push-up tracker has gone up in amounts of 10. And I have not changed it back. Although I was making some pretty good progress, and I was, like now I go over my push-up tracker all the time. Chill. Chill, little bro. It's okay. Sorry about that. My dog gets like, anyway. Yeah, that's the quality of this video. I'm not editing this shit at all. If you're still here, I hope this is helping you. I hope this makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I did too, same thing with the habit tracker. I had 9 habits on there, right? And it looks exactly like the push-up tracker that I showed you. And I wasn't completing any of them. And I was trying to figure out why. And so what did I do? I just took the habit tracker and simplified it. And even now I simplified it because I don't want to do all that crap. Like before, I was like very big into the morning routine. And I had this thought that like I have to get up and I have to take a cold shower and I have to go on a walk and I have to gratitude journal and stretch and do push-ups and abs and read. And like by the time I did all that crap, 3 hours had gone by and I had wasted all my time. So I don't do any of that anymore. But still, yet again, my habit tracker has 4 habits on it. It's like meditate, abs, stretch, and read my goals. That's it. It's like everything on there. But yeah, so start over is the basic criteria. So like, what can you do that's like minimalistic to get yourself from here to here? It's like, well, I can work for 3 hours, right? 3 hours of work, and then I can meditate for 3 minutes of meditation, and I can read 5 pages of a book. And also with a book, I just like to put this out there. If you're struggling to read it, it might literally be the book you're reading. So like my suggestion, just go get another book. Like, I don't know about you, but I have plenty of books I haven't read. So like if I ever decide, screw it, I don't want to read this book, I will go find another book. If that happens. Now I've gotten pretty good at like just focusing on what I'm reading and finishing the book, but like I have had times where it's like I just don't want to read this book. I don't find this book interesting, so I don't finish it. And that's how it works, And then I can do 30 push-ups, right? And now We're just a little bit closer to right here. And like I said, if you start over, you recognize first what the problem is and what fear you're going through. That's the first thing you have to do. You recognize the problem. And if you, again, like I said, if you recognize it's a problem, you can fix it, you can become better. And then, secondly, start over. So you start from the beginning. This is where you were. This is how you get better. This is how you move forward. And you just move little by little by little every day, constantly just get back to where you were. And eventually it snaps and you're back into rhythm. But I think a lot of times what happens when we hit this like writer's block or when we can't do our work, it's because of one of these fears. And then we think we have this expectation that we can just get right back to it immediately and forget about this middle part. You still have to get over that. And the third thing I want to put out there is like set boundaries, right? So I know you want to think that you can get right back into it, but if you try to push yourself too far, you'll end up falling back again, which is exactly what's happened to me. Maybe I'm just different. Maybe this isn't you, but from my experience, when I've tried to, all of a sudden I wasn't meditating for a month and then I just tried to do a 20-minute meditation, I didn't meditate again ever, like for another month after that. So that's why I encourage you to set boundaries and like be okay with the level that you've done. So if you're working 3 days a week and you're only working for 2 hours, which is, this is real. Like this, I remember like back in the day when I first got started, I couldn't sit down for more than an hour and a half and do something productive. Now I can sit here for hours and hours and hours and do productive stuff, but I literally couldn't do it for more than an hour and a half. Well, finally, I decided um, to sit down and do work that was important to me and that helped me out and do a lot of it at one portion of time. And like I said, I wasn't able to do that for the longest, but I had to slowly get myself there. And the only way I was able to do that was by setting boundaries with the level of work that I would do. So I was struggling to do work. Guess what I did? 3 hours. That was it. So after those 3 hours, I would stop working because I wasn't, because if I tried to go to 6, 7, and 8 hours, I would go right back down to these 2 hours. Right. And when I talk about this stuff, I'm really mainly speaking to you. If you're watching this, like, there's a good chance it's because you started doing something like a business or started going to the gym and you stopped doing it, or you want to get back into it and get better at it, or you're just starting out. Because when you get to a certain point, like, none of this matters anymore, honestly. Like, when you get to a certain point, like, you just kind of sit down and do work. And that comes with like flow state. And, I can talk about that in a different video. And to be honest, I'm not well informed on flow state enough to honestly feel like I should talk about it. This is just what I know. Um, and this is what's helped me. So I'm relaying the information. So you set boundaries on what the level of work you can do is. And then the last one, you push those boundaries. Now I just said, but like in a timeline though. So I hope I'm spelling boundaries correctly, but maybe you don't push these boundaries immediately, right? Like if this is today and you're working like 3 hours and you do 3 minutes of meditation, like, or you know what? I'm just gonna use the same picture I'm using here. Sorry for being, anyway. Yeah, so you do this for 1 week, and then next week you do 5 hours, and you do 6 minutes, and then you do 10 minutes of, or 10 pages of the book. You do 6 minutes of meditation, 10 pages of the book, and you do 60 push-ups a day. Well, now you're closer. But I think we just have this weird thought process that just because we were like this at some point We just have to get back to it. And that's not the case. So slowly but surely get back in the routine. Boy, this video is going on forever because I still have more I want to talk about with this. I think I'm kind of just ranting off the top of my head. If you've watched this far, thank you for watching, and I hope this is really, really giving you some value and like you understand. And I would like to hear your opinions on what you've done in the comments. But I really want to talk about why it's important to take these baby steps, right? Because if you look in the macro, you know how I was talking about micro, macro earlier in the video? Like if you look in the macro, if 10 years go by, you are better than you were today. So let's bring it back. So like this is where you were last week, and then this is where you are today. But in 10 years you're up here. And actually I'm gonna redraw this. This looks like shit. So this is where you are last week. This is where you are today. But since last year, this is last year, and this is in 10 years, right? This is your graph. And obviously, this is just one divot in the whole thing. Like there's going to be like more divots like all through this thing, but like objectively, this is kind of what the line looks like. Like if you're into like stocks at all, like you kind of understand how like there's a general path, right, that's being taken. And I like to look at it in the macro sense. Like you're working on your business now and you're becoming the person that you ultimately want to become, or you're doing the thing that makes you better and more like that person. You probably weren't doing that fucking 2 years ago, right? Probably sitting there watching TV and bullshitting, right? But over time you've gotten better. And so I like to look at it in a macro sense. Like I like to just calm down for a second and just not get upset that things aren't going my way. I like to just calm down and understand that like just because today this happened, it doesn't mean that I can't continue to go up like that. So little by little, and also, you know what I was saying, like you can go little by little with the, you know, maybe yesterday you did X, Y, and Z, and then tomorrow you do double of X, Y, and Z. Honestly, I would pick one thing to start with at a time. I know I said I didn't really mention that before, but I would pick one thing. So like work is like pick the most important one first. So like say, you know, you're at 2 hours of work and like 1 hour in the gym. I'm not going to draw the whole thing. But like 2 hours of work and 1 hour in the gym. You know, you want to do more of it. Like I would say do 3 hours of work and stick to 1 hour in the gym, but slowly but surely get better over time. And it's going to take practice. It's going to take effort to get to the proper place you're trying to go. But really spend time just slowly making improvements. And if you continue to make improvements, you will get better. So that's my rant for the day. I know that went on for very, very long. But yeah, the 4 steps: recognize your problem, start from the beginning, set boundaries, and then push those boundaries little by little. And again, recognize these fears, and you should be fine. Should be fine. Should be ready to keep fucking continuing. And I hope that helped. I wasn't gonna go into like some thing where it's like if you do some crazy magic and you like, I mean, like you kind of knew this stuff, right? Like, but I just feel like sometimes we need people to tell us like, hey, you set boundaries and you start over and you like really retry, start from the beginning, you can crush it. But I don't think we're willing to tell that to ourselves. So sometimes we need to hear it from other people. But yeah, it wasn't going to be like some hippie crazy thing that you do and it was going to work. Like you just had to do a couple things. So like I said, it was up there. Recognize, start over, set boundaries, push boundaries, and you should be good. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to be making more content like this. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Stop scrolling on social media because that's a big problem to begin with because I don't have it written anymore. But scrolling on social media is a distraction. It keeps you from doing the things that you need to get done.